I think that, in my very humble opinion, this is probably one of the best memoirs that I have ever read in my entire life. Friends, welcome and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Sigrid and I make videos about books because I love them. During the month of February, I would like to use my channel and my platform and the little reach that I do have to amplify and review and recommend as many Black books as I can. I try my best to read as diversely as possible, but I do understand that it is kind of hard to find recommendations for different books. I wanted to create a little monthly series for this month where I look through my shelf and I pick books created by Black authors and I section them off based on genre. So this will be the first of, I believe, 5 videos for this month. We have romance, we have YA, we have fantasy, memoirs, and there's one more, thrillers. So for this video, we're going to be talking about the memoirs that I will be reading during the month of February. So let's get started. And for each of these videos, I'm going to be selecting 5 books. Although I do have way more than 5 picked for each of the categories, I will be randomly selecting 5 of them and reading them in those videos. But for this particular video, I have already selected 5 because I don't have a lot of memoirs on my shelf. So the 5 books that I'm going to be reading is The Pursuit of Porsha by Porsha Williams. Next up, we have The Light We Carry, Overcoming in Uncertain Times by Michelle Obama. I will be picking up the audiobooks for most of these because I love to hear, you know, people's story in their own voices. The next one is going to be Finding Me by Viola Davis. I am super excited for this. I love Viola Davis. I love her movies. I loved How to Get Away with Murder. Like, that was one of my favorite TV shows. And then we have Alicia Keys' memoir. This is More Myself, A Journey. I'm excited about this. Alicia Keys was one of my favorite singers growing up. She actually inspired me to sing a little, you know, a little something. And it was actually the first CD that I ever owned. So, funny story about that. And then finally, we have Tamara Mori Housley's You Should Sit Down for This, a memoir about life, wine, and cookies. So, yeah, those are all the books that I'm going to be reading. So we're going to jump right in and get started. We have a lot to cover and a lot of books to get through. Yeah, I'm excited though. I love memoirs. I love to learn about people's lives, especially those that I am curious about. So, yeah, let's just jump right in and get started. Y'all. All I can say is I just have the intentions. Okay, so I'm reading, I just finished reading this book. Ooh. I just finished reading this book, okay? So I was like, you know what? I'm still awake. I think it was like, what, 12 o'clock? Okay, it's now 7 a.m. Because I was like, I'm still awake. I'm just going to read a little bit of The Pursuit of Porsha. Like, I'm just going to read like just a few chapters just to get the gist of it. You know, y'all. I have tabbed this up so much. Like, I ate this book up. I ate this book up. And I normally don't rate memoirs, but baby, it is 5 freaking stars. There's 2 things that I feel like could have been better. Number 1, where was Simon? Like, I wanted to know about her current relationship, but I feel like it was a classy thing to do to not mention it because, like, I was just there for the gossip, but I feel like I went in expecting tea. I went in expecting cattiness and pettiness, and what I got was something I wasn't even expecting. I got a memoir about self-esteem, love, being a Black woman. I got so many things that in this book that just brought me so much joy. I got joy, okay? And I will say the only thing that I wouldn't change it, but the only thing that I would say was a little like kind of like messy was the very last chapter. It kind of reminds me of the second Gabrielle Union book when I said that it was just like randomly, like they threw in some random like Black Lives Matter things and random facts. I feel like although it was very well written, I feel like it was just very abrupt to do that chapter. It wasn't anything leading into it. It was just kind of like we were talking about her being a mother and having her baby Pilar and how she's like always wanted children, her inner struggle and everything about it. We get the baby and then the last chapter is like Black Lives Matter. And I'm like, I just didn't feel like it flowed, but I did like that it was included and I did like how it was written. It was just perfect. Okay. So This book is The Pursuit of Porsha. This is by Porsha Williams. If you don't know who she is, okay, you better recognize. Okay, she was on the Real Housewives of Atlanta. I don't think she's on there anymore. She was my favorite housewife. I got this because I knew that I just loved her personality, and I felt deep down inside that she was like a nice person. Like, I really did think that she was just so fun, and just like her energy, like you can see that she was just like such a nice person. So anyways, this is her memoir, and there are so many triggers in here, but it's worth it. It really is worth it. It's not even that much of an uncomfortable read, but there are like certain parts where it's just like, yeah, there were some parts where I teared up. So let's just go over the triggers, because I have been like updating my Goodreads. So if you guys ever wonder, I do update my Goodreads as I'm reading them. So if I can remember correctly, there was a trigger warning for miscarriage, abortion, physical abuse, sexual assault, suicide ideation. I think that might be, oh, there is another warning here when it comes to like fertility issues, when it comes to children, and the topic of having fibroids. That fibroids is something that really affect Black women as a whole. In fact, a lot of people in my family are affected by it as well, but they could make it really hard for you to have children, and this is something that Porsha went through. I feel like the book was just well written. I don't know if she personally read it, wrote it herself, but I just think it was super easy to read. I recommend the audiobook. At first, I wasn't liking it because I felt like it was just a little too chill. But after a while, it kind of felt like you had a friend and she was just telling you about her life. And I really fully loved it. Like, Porsha is my favorite, and so much stuff goes on in this book. Also, I forgot one more trigger warning. Did you know she was also a victim of R. Kelly? Trigger warning. He gets his own trigger warning, because what? Oh, and so the audiobook is narrated by Porsha, but for some of the deeper topics that she feel like it was be difficult for her to talk about, she got her sister to read them, which I think was a very healthy choice. I really like how she is now putting boundaries on just being on her happiness. I feel like she's saying, I want to write this book. I want you guys to see how living in your purpose could be. However, I don't want to dwell on the past, and some of the things, if I'm reading it, could be a little too much and bring up old wounds. But I think that this book was really well written. I could not put it down. I like, there were certain parts where I was smiling throughout the book. There were some parts where I teared up when she started talking about being a new mom after, like, I just feel like we went through this journey with her. I felt like it was like a movie, and we went through all of this, and then at the end we finally got to see the baby that she wanted, because she, like, we went through it, sis, we lived it too. I will say, if you're not a very religious person, you might not like this book, because she is a religious person and she does talk about God a lot. She does talk about praying a lot. So a lot of her like motivational and self-help advice does come from a religious standpoint. I grew up in the church. That will always be my foundation, my background. So it was a little refreshing to me. I ended up smiling, and it just made me feel like at home. It made me feel comfort and just full of hope and full of joy. And her moms reminded me of my mom. And it's just really good to like just go over the major parts of her life and to see like how she became the person she is. So in this book, I definitely highly recommend it to you. And I specifically recommend it to my friend Simone. I know you will freaking love this book. This book will be a 5-star read, I guarantee you, and you're going to like keep it forever. I actually think I want to keep my copy. Because I could see myself rereading it. It was such a good time. I laughed, I cried, I got angry. Like, I experienced so many emotions from a memoir, and I don't think that I've done that in a really long time. So this was really good. We are off to a really good start, and I can't wait to read the rest of these books. Okay, so hi guys. So I have finished reading Tamara Mowry's memoir. Let's talk about it. Okay, so my thoughts on this one. I want to just go ahead and do a disclaimer, because I feel like it's necessary. I do not rate memoirs if I am not going to give them 5 stars. I feel like if I read a book and I really like it and it's 5 stars, I have no problem rating it 5 stars. But if I read a memoir and I feel like it's not going to be a 5-star read, I don't feel like I can justify giving it a lower rating or judging that person's life. I don't know, it just makes me feel a little weird, unless it's problematic. If they say something that I feel like is disgusting or something like that, then yeah, I will wholeheartedly give it the 1 or 2 stars that it deserves. But if it's just someone's lifestyle and or if they're writing a memoir and I don't necessarily gravitate towards it, I'm not going to rate it on Goodreads. However, for this video, I will tell you like what I would rate it if I would. For this book, it would be a 2.5 or very low 3-star. So this book, basically Tamara starts off by talking about her childhood and how she was basically a pageant girl, and she pretty much talked about like all of the rejection that she got and all of like the discrimination that she's faced as like a child actor, or you know, seeing that when she came up there wasn't a lot of positions or acting gigs for Black people. Now this was really interesting, and then she just kind of follows up by saying, you know, when she got on Sister, and after that gig, it was really hard for her to get another acting job. I truly think that there are two different types of people who read memoirs. There are the type of people that read memoirs because they want to know more about the person and feel connected, and they kind of expect for the person to let down their shield and get vulnerable and tell people things about them because that's what a memoir is to them. And I feel like I gravitate towards that definition. And if that is your definition of what you go into, you're wanting to know the tea, you want to know juicy details about that person, and you want to feel as though once you close the book that you actually know this person a little bit more than you did before you opened the book. If that is the case, then you will be disappointed in this book. However, if you are someone who reads memoirs for inspiration, for motivational quotes, for someone who gives you words of wisdom but does not open up about their lives, then you probably would like this book. I feel like I have a friend who really enjoyed this book and she liked the way that it was written. Tamara actually uses like desserts and wine and cookies in her stories to kind of make you feel as though you're sitting there talking to her. And it's actually written out in the very beginning that you're coming to visit her and you're sitting down and eating cookies and drinking something with her. And I feel like this is very similar to Porsha's book, but the feeling was there without having to be said. I felt as though I was sitting down and Porsha was telling me her life story, but it wasn't said, you're sitting down and I'm telling you about, you know. I just feel like Tamara is very peppy and positive, and I don't know if that's necessarily something that I feel like. I do feel like she might in real life be a bubbly person, but I was expecting for her to get real. I was expecting for her to let down everything and share things with her fans. I will say there are a lot of things and opportunities that I feel like she could have shared more about her life, but she chose to not do. And it's like topics that she would bring up herself. For example, she brought up her sex life and she was saying like a lot of people have told her that she's a prude. And she was like, as a Christian woman, I want that information to be between me and my husband. Okay, that's fine, but why would you bring it up in the book and then leave us empty-handed? And then she was like, but I'm a freak in the sheets. And then that was it. Like, you can't just make a statement like that and don't back it up, sis. Like, I don't know. So even after reading this book, which is like, you know, the weirdest thing, ironically, even after reading this book, I still feel like I know her sister more than her. And I just read a whole book about her life. It's crazy. And I just feel like her sister Tia is like, she shares more on her social media. Like, I feel like she is just an open book. Tamara is more closed off. The chapter that I liked the most in this book was when she talked about her niece who was a victim of a mass shooting at a club. And it was very emotional. And I will say this, I really enjoyed hearing Tamara's voice. I think she has an amazing voice to be a good narrator for audiobooks. I would like to see her narrate more books because it was a really enjoyable experience just hearing her talk to me. But this book, I just feel like it's very much a feeler product. I feel like even after reading this very short book, it's very short, but even so, I just feel like I don't know anything about Tamara. Very much surface level. I want to get deep, because this is a memoir. I feel like a memoir should let people know more about you. That's what a memoir is. Am I misinterpreting like what a memoir is? Because when I read Porsha's, I got to know her on a closer level. I didn't know the things that she's been through. Things I do like the writing style. I do like her positivity. I think it was somewhat enjoyable. It's just, I feel like I kind of was like, it's kind of gimmicky to just write a book about like background stuff or very generic information without really diving deep into it. But yeah, I still am a fan. I still love Tia and Tamara. I still plan on rewatching Sister Sister, but I just kind of feel like this memoir left a lot to be desired, and I wouldn't recommend it to people who want to know more about Tamara. I feel like you don't really get anything other than surface level or just generic background information. So yeah, I'm going to be moving on to my next book, and I will come back and let you guys know what my thoughts are. We're going to Nespresso. It's closing. Okay, hi friends. I completely forgot that I did not show you guys what I got from Nespresso yesterday. I picked up 3 sleeves, and I'm also going to try to show you guys my favorite coffee now. I'm currently keto, and so I am eliminating sugar, so no sugar or, you know, sugar alternatives and very little carbs. So I feel like my coffee recipe works for literally anyone. It's really good and it's really sweet, so I like it, and Brian likes it, and I feel like literally anyone will like it. So anyways, let me show you what I got. Yesterday I got 2 of these caramel cookie, and these, I have the Virtuo, I don't know how to say it, but I have the Virtuo machine, and so I use these. I got this, and then I got the vanilla custard pie. I have played around with my coffee recipe for quite a little bit, and I realized that the caramel cookie actually tastes the best with it, but I used to use the vanilla custard pie, but I prefer caramel cookies. Okay, hi everyone. So I realized that I have not popped in a minute to give you guys the updates on these books. I have finished reading the rest of the memoirs, and I have thoughts. So I'm just going to sit down and tell you guys about all of the books that I have read. I'm going to do them in order, and I actually took some notes on my phone, so let me pull those up. So the next book I read was Finding Me by Viola Davis, and I have the most notes on this. I think that, in my very humble opinion, this is probably one of the best memoirs that I have ever read in my entire life. This was a high 5 stars, and I was so proud to put it on Goodreads because I was like, this was amazing. So let me just go over my notes because it's been a while and I've read 2 books since I read this one, but I wholeheartedly enjoyed her story, like, so much. It was emotional, of course. It wasn't only a good story. It had a lot of like really deep triggering issues, which I did write down. I guess I'll move into my list of triggers. I saw 9 triggers, but there could be potentially more. So the first one is a really big one, and it's very much on page. It's very written out. So if this is a trigger of yours, you might want to skip this one because it's definitely there, and that's domestic violence. She grew up in a household where her father was extremely abusive to her mother, to the point where her life was in danger several times. And I will say that it's even worse because this person was on page and positive things were written about him throughout his entire life, and I don't agree with that. But I understand it because where I'm from, and I feel like me and Viola have like similar upbringings because we're both Southern, and we believe that you should forgive family because they're family. And I've been hearing that throughout my entire life. There's so many people to say life is too short, that's your family, it doesn't matter what they do. And I feel like that's a really toxic way of thinking because it doesn't hold people accountable for their actions. People have used that same like logic to force people to forgive people that have done the unthinkable just because they're family or just because life is too short. And that just doesn't allow people to be held accountable for their actions. Like, sometimes people can do really horrible things, and those people can be your family. That doesn't mean that you have to forgive them all the time, and that doesn't mean that you have to have them in your life. I mean, that is something that's probably super like taboo to think, but I just don't think that way. But it is definitely a Southern way of thinking. And like, I do have a lot of family members who will tell me, well, life is too short, forgive this person for, you know, random things. And, you know, yeah. So say all of that to say that the father is going to be mentioned, and it's in a positive light later on to kind of like excuse what he's done to the mother. So I didn't like that, but I do think other than that, this was very well written. Trigger number 2. Viola experienced a lot of bullying when she was growing up in school, and so we do get to see that. It's pretty much on page as well, so if that is something that is triggering to you, you might want to you know, skip this one as well. There's colorism and racism in here, and I put that under the same category. Sexual assault is also mentioned in here. I don't think that it's on page if I remember correctly, but I mean, it is mentioned like maybe in 3 separate experiences. Alcohol addiction is another thing that is in here. There's a scene in here where an animal is murdered by like a person who was experiencing a mental break, and I didn't like that, but I mean, it happened, so I can't really say it can't be in the book, but I mean, it is definitely something that could be a trigger in some people who really love animals. I think it was a cat, if I remember correctly. So trigger number 7, abortion. Trigger number 8, cheating. There is cheating in here. And trigger number 9, there is a death of a parent. Okay, so we're gonna get into my pros list. I did not find one con. I guess if I'm thinking of a con, I guess I could say that I didn't like that she portrayed her father in a positive light after he was abusive to their mother. But I don't know, it's her story, so I can't really, I have such a hard time like judging memoirs. But I will go over the pros, and I found 10 things that I really loved about this. First pro was that I really love the Southern representation. As a Southerner, I felt so seen, and I felt like I really related, and I really feel like I bonded with Viola. Like, I feel like she's like my long lost aunt or something. Like, I just feel so close to her now. So yeah. Pro number 2, the writing. The writing is so good. It's very clear. I feel as though I can picture literally everything that was happening in the book because the writing was just so well written. But also, like, because there's so many emotional and triggering things in here, that's probably not the best thing. But number 3, so I wrote I love her parents, but that was like before her father got abusive. So I would like to change that to I love her mother, because even though they didn't have much, they grew up in a very financially unstable environment. There was still so much love that you could kind of tell from her mother, like she really loved Viola. There were 2 scenes where I wrote it down. Mother stood up to some of the bullies that was bullying Viola and her sisters. Like, she literally hit the kids. And I mean, I guess you could probably say that that is a trigger as well, but like, the way that I see it is that if you're someone who wanted a child and you grow and you're bonded with that person, and all you want to do in the world is protect that little bundle of joy, and then you have to wake up one day and send them off to kindergarten into the world where there are so many like bad things that could happen, and then you're like, oh, I'm being ridiculous, like nothing is going to happen, they're going to be completely fine. And then you find out that there's children that's like literally bullying your kids and hurting them. Like, I don't know, I just feel as though I can't really judge her for like hitting those kids, because really should teach your kids not to hit others though. So Viola writes that they were so poor that they lived in a condemned apartment. It was just so bad that they didn't even have to pay rent after a certain time because it was literally condemned, and it would constantly catch on fire. So there was a scene where everyone was trying to escape using the fire escape, and Viola was the last person, and she got really scared and she couldn't jump down because it was so far. There was a scene where her mother like literally like did a running jump and tried like got her off of the fire escape, but she ended up hurting herself in the process. And that was just like such a clear example of love, because I'm just like, that is a mother's love right there. Number 4, the sisterhood in here is just amazing. Like, Viola was so close to her sisters, and I loved seeing that. It was just so beautifully written. Like, I really wanted to tear up because I have sisters, and like it just made me so happy to see that reflected. Number 5, her love story with Julius. It happens later on in the book. I was so happy that Viola found love, because growing up she really had a really she had issues with self-esteem, because she was constantly being bullied. She was constantly being made fun of for the color of her skin and the way that she looked. She didn't think that she was that pretty. So when she met Julius, I was just smiling the entire chapter, like when he was introduced. And the fact is, like, they're still together and they've gotten married like several times, like remarried several times. That makes me so happy to see. Number 6, there is sections in here that has pictures, and I absolutely love memoirs that have pictures. And not only do they just have it, but it's like written underneath it like what each picture is, and it's like a nice little section of it. Like, it goes on and on. So it just kind of allows you to put a picture to the people who like are being introduced. So I really like that. Number 7, there is representation of fibroids. And as someone who suffers from endometriosis, as someone who has ovarian cysts, I really love the representation. I truly feel as though this should be considered a chronic illness if it already isn't. It's like your body is attacking you. Like, you never know when you're safe. One day you could be completely fine, and the next day you have these horrible cramps, you have really heavy bleeding. It's just super unbearable, and to see that reflected and to show, like, I really love that. Viola's was really severe to the point where she had to adopt her child, and I really love seeing that as well. I think that her fibroids was really bad, that she had to get surgery and have a partial hysterectomy, which really probably affected her ability to have children, which it's an issue that I am really nervous about as well with my condition. So I really just, it made me kind of tear up and feel really seen to see that representation in here. 9, there was mentioning of a program that I was involved in when I was in college called Upward Bound. It is a program for low-income high school students to get them prepared for college, and I was a mentor when I was in college. So I would work with the local high school students, and whenever she said Upward Bound, I just got so happy, because I don't see a lot of people talk about that program. Like, it's just, or it's called something completely different. So I was so happy with that. Okay, so number 10, there were so many quotes in this book that I truly love. Like, I was like typing them onto Goodreads because I'm physically reading, so I don't know how to pull the quote other than like typing it out. So I'm gonna read like my 2 favorite ones. So this one is about colorism, and it just really resonated with me. So it says, when you are a dark-skinned girl, no one simply adores you. They laugh with you, tell you their secrets, treat you like one of the boys, but there's no care given to you, no devotion given to you. The absence of that becomes an erasure. Another one says, my biggest discovery was that you can literally recreate your life. You can redefine it. You don't have to live in the past. I found that not only did I have fight in me, I had love. This book hit differently, and I recommend it with my entire chest. Like, if I had to recommend any of these books, it would be this book. Like, if you want to pick up something, this one. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next book I read. This is More Myself by Alicia Keys, A Journey. This book follows Alicia Keys. It's a little bit different than Viola's. She's from New York, so we get to see her upbringing with her mother. Her mother was a paralegal. I think one of the things that was really important, and if you know Alicia Keys, you know that she is known for playing the piano. I liked seeing how the piano was introduced to her as a teenager. Let me just start with a rating. For this one, I would give it more of a 3-star. I feel as though there were points in here where I got a little bit bored, and I kind of felt as though it was not told in the most exciting way. But I will say one of the pros that I did like is that if you listen to the audiobook, Alicia is narrating, but she does bring in other people to talk to you and like do like little inserts about like their experience or their relationship. So some of the people off the top of my head: Oprah, Michelle Obama, her husband Swizz Beatz, and her parents also made a cameo, Clive Davis and JC. I thought that that was really a unique way of doing an audiobook, which I thought was really cool. So you actually heard these people's voices. It wasn't her just reading a letter, like they actually was on the audiobook, and I thought that that was really cool. But I would just say my overall thought of this, and the reason why I gave it a 3 stars, like I said, I felt a little bored, but I also just didn't feel, I don't know, I didn't feel it. Like I felt like Viola was like super open and vulnerable, and it's like in this one I just didn't get that same vibe. It's not something that I would go out of my way to recommend. It wasn't a book that I would reread. Yeah, there's not anything else that I can say about this. I don't even remember most of it, and I literally read it last night. So the final book that I did read was Michelle Obama's latest book, and this is The Life We Carry: Overcoming in Uncertain Times. So I rated this 4 stars, and I will say that this book should not be in this video. I wanted to do Memoirs, and reading Becoming was a 5 star. Okay, if you want to read a memoir by Michelle Obama, Becoming is probably one of my favorite memoirs out there. It was a 5 star read. This one is more of a self-help book. I still enjoyed it, but I'm not the biggest person to do like a self-help book. I'm not someone who enjoys self-help books or seek them out. Even I was like, when I was listening to this, I was paying attention and noting some of the coping mechanisms that she used. She talks a lot about COVID and how the world completely changed. She talks about Black Lives Matter and how a lot about Trump, and how like he kind of stood by and just watched the world go in a really negative direction without standing up and speaking on it and saying that's not right. And like her opinion, she felt as though he kind of initiated it and led people to do those things. So but yeah, she talks about how her coping mechanism, she talks about her relationship with Barack Obama, she talks about parenting in here. It's a very, I would definitely recommend it for someone who is looking for a self-help book. But if you're in particular trying to learn more about her life, you will get a little bit, but I think you will get way more information about her life in Becoming, which is her first book. Like I said, this is more of a self-help book. I still recommend it. I really got a lot out of it, and I really did enjoy it. I did like Becoming just a tad bit better. So those were my thoughts on these books for Black History Month. I really hope that you guys enjoyed the recommendations. So just to remind you, I will be doing several other videos during this month, reading and recommending several books in different genres. So I will be doing YA, fantasy, romance, and thrillers. So they are all coming up. I believe the next video will be thrillers by Black authors. I am already starting to read them. So yeah, this was a really fun idea, and I hope that you guys like the recommendations. Until next time, I will see you guys later. Bye.